Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard. I'm here with Greg Sugar, who has done a lot of different things in his career. He's been a lawyer. He co-founded and sold an early direct-to-consumer business called The Tie Bar. He got back into men's accessories with another company he founded called Bow Ties. That's the French bow, as in B-E-A-U. And he's also an investor in an apparel business called Carrie Amber Intimates. Welcome to the podcast, Greg.
Thank you for having me, Lauren.
My pleasure. Greg, I think both of your businesses, but I know for sure one of them, you actually manufacture in this country. Supposedly the tariffs were created to help domestic manufacturers like you. Have they helped?
Funny how that works. They have not helped. Yes, Bow Ties of Vermont is a company I bought 6.5 years ago. We are a 32-year-old company, and we manufacture, meaning we cut and sew all of our own bow ties, neckties, and other men's accessories in Middlebury, Vermont. The reason why an American manufacturer like ours would get hurt from these tariffs is because of this. The inputs that we use, so our fabric, our raw materials, are all from overseas. So you might ask the question, well, then why don't you just source them domestically? The answer is, they don't make the kind of fabric that we need domestically, which is silk, jacquard fabric. All that type of fabric that is used to make men's neckwear is made either in China, mostly in China, or in Italy. There are other parts of the world that make some, although they are not nearly as good as the Chinese or even the Italians. And so we are forced to get our fabric from overseas. And when we bring it in from overseas, we pay a tariff on that fabric. You would think that an American manufacturer might be exempt from these tariffs in order to protect us, which is the supposed edict from the Trump administration. But in fact, we're not protected, and we do indeed pay tariffs. So when the tariffs go up, so do our costs.
Was there a time when the tariffs were first announced that you thought this might actually benefit you?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things. One was the tariffs. We've always had to pay tariffs, just so you know. This isn't a new thing. However, Trump got on television multiple times saying, and literally these words, if you make things here in the U.S., you won't pay a tariff. So we thought that was a signal that finally tariffs, the older tariffs, would be removed from our fabric. But little did we know, not only was that not true, but the new tariffs were also going to be put onto our what we import. So tariffs have only gone up and costs have only gone up for us.
What were you paying in tariffs before this year began?
Before this year began, we were paying 25%. It actually was 7.2% before 2018 when Donald Trump put in the first 25% tariff on Chinese goods. So it went up to 25% then. This year, as you know, it's just been crazy. It's China in particular. First of all, Italy is now 15% when it was 0. So that went from 0 to 15%. China, of course, has been all over the place. As we sit here right now in mid-October, the tariff is still another 30% on top of the 25%. So we're 55%. But he's made this social media threat to China, which, of course, all presidents do. I'm kidding. And he's now talking about another 100% tariff. There's been no executive order issue. There's really been no further word on it. So even though we are now 11 days away, I think, as date of this recording, 11 days away from November 1st, the day that he claims they're going to go up, we still don't know. And by the way, not only do we not know if there's going to be additional tariffs, we don't know when they would apply. Do they apply to shipments that leave the dock in China or leave the airport in China on November 1st? Do they have to arrive here before November 1st? I'm lucky enough to be in a position, at least with Bow Ties of Vermont, where I can control the shipping and the ordering a little bit easier. We're a little bit more flexible. But my other company, and certainly so many other American companies, really need to understand, would this apply for shipments that take off before November 1st, or does it have to dock here? And that's a huge problem because we're not talking about an additional 10 or 20%. 100% is a huge difference, and in essence, an embargo on trade from China. People will not be able to make profits if they are paying 100% tariffs on China. So we really need to get this straight. And the fact that he hasn't even addressed it, nor, of course, has Congress pushed him to address it, is really frustrating for American businesses of all kinds.
Are you trying to rush any orders in right now to try to beat the 100% possibility?
Yeah, we are. We actually had a flight that was scheduled for November 2nd. I was able to get my factory to push it up, and it's supposed to land October 30th if everything is okay. It's going to be in our hands October 30th. Of course, if there's any delays, it might come after November 1st. And again, I don't know what the tariff's going to be on November 1st. And so I could be in for a bit of trouble. But as of right now, I was able to rush that in effectively and we'll be fine. That's for Bow Ties of Vermont. For Carrie Amber, and again, for so many other small businesses that order literally pallets and pallets of products from China, we use ocean freight for that, and it's a much longer process, and you just don't have the control or flexibility or agility to change ship dates and all that other stuff. We may end up having to use a bonded warehouse, which can be an astronomical expense, where you basically don't pay your tariff bill until it's released. But again, this uncertainty...
And just to explain that, Greg, you would do that. You put it into the bonded warehouse and you don't pay the tariff until you actually take delivery. And you do that because you're hoping that the tariffs will be reduced in the meantime, or...
That's correct. If they go up, yeah, you keep them in a bonded warehouse until you say otherwise. And what you try to do is you try to hold off until the president, sort of renegotiates, which ultimately is him negotiating against himself, and lowers the tariffs. But it's unknown where he's going with this. That's one of the biggest problems with him is there's no logic behind his tariffs. There's no predictability, and as a result, nobody knows what's next. I know a lot of people like to joke around about Taco Trump, and there's certainly been a lot of instances of him chickening out. But there's also been instances of him not chickening out. So I don't really know what's next. And again, 100% tariff is a deal breaker. I mean, it's going to put people out of business.
Can you tell us the value of the shipment that you're expecting or hoping to get before November 1st?
For Bow Ties of Vermont, our shipment is, I think, $17,000, right? So so our tariff bill is going to currently be roughly, half that, whatever that is, 55%. And it could go up to, I don't know if it's 100 or 155%. Another thing he's completely unclear with. So, our costs have gone up and we've raised prices as a result. I mean, we had to. We held, like a lot of companies, we held off as long as we could. But at this point, we can no longer.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, you saw this coming, you knew there was a possibility, and I assume in January, maybe before he took office, or maybe even before 2024 ended, you placed much larger orders than you usually do. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it got us through a big chunk of the year. I think until about June, we placed a new purchase order. And at that point, it was sort of, I can't remember where we were exactly, but basically, I know we were still at 30%. I think we were in the middle of a 90-day extension. And so I had to place another order. I had no choice. And so we did pay the additional 30% tariff on that shipment, again, in addition to the original 25%. And it became inevitable. We had to raise our prices. We've tried to be strategic about it as far as which prices to raise and how much. I won't go through the details of all that, but so in other words, it hasn't been completely across the board, but we have in some places. And so what's happened is to my company is what's happening to everyone's company, which is there are no winners. Every company in America who's importing goods from overseas is paying higher costs than they were before. Those costs, though, are not fully being passed on to consumers because a consumer is not going to pay, for example, 30% more than they used to. That's insane. And so what happens is companies are eating some of the cost and they're passing on some of the costs. So we pay more, customer pays more. There's no winners. The only winner here is the U.S. government is collecting more in tariffs. And now we're hearing that tariff money the revenue is going to be to help subsidize farmers.
I want to come back to that. I think that's a really interesting point. But first, can you answer? Can you tell us? Can you make money under the current tariff regime, meaning let's pretend the 100% isn't going to happen. As things stand right now, is it possible for you to function profitably?
We are barely making it, to be totally honest. I mean, we are profitable. We are paying our bills. If this 30% lasts forever, we're going to have to make a serious determination on raising prices even more and passing even more off. And the truth is, at a certain point, you raise your prices and you start to lose the customers, or their average order value starts to drop, and ultimately we won't be selling as many ties, bow ties, cummerbunds, pocket squares, and so I may have to let go of workers. And at a certain point, I'm not going to be able to make my monthly nut if we're not selling enough stuff. So it's hard to know where this is headed. I don't know how much of this I can eat forever.
What has been the reaction to the price increases thus far? Have you seen a fall off in sales? Have you gotten angry pushback from customers? What's it been like?
Yeah, so I mean, we're fortunate that customers are either accepting of it or don't notice it. It's a good retailer will not tell its customers, "Hey, we're raising prices." You just kind of do it.
Well, especially with a specialty item that people may not buy all the time. I don't buy as many ties as I used to.
Right.
I might not notice the 30% increase, I suspect.
Yeah, well, you would notice 30%. We didn't raise it 30%. We were raising it anywhere from 10 to 15. I will tell you, right around April, we sent an email to all of our customers letting them know that if the tariffs didn't drop, we more than likely would have to raise prices. And I got a lot of email back. I would say all of them were positive. Some of them were questioning, why would an American manufacturer be paying tariffs? So we had to explain it to them. But it was typically well received. There were a lot of companies having sales around this. So basically saying prices are going up on, I don't remember the date, let's say it was May 31st. And so get everything now at the old price before the new price. So it even wasn't a sale, but it was more like get it now before the prices go up type of sale. And there were some companies with great success with that. Although, they're really pulling forward their sales typically, right? So maybe the sale went well, but I suspect that right after prices went up, they were probably a little quieter than usual.
I don't know if this makes any sense at all, but given this environment, have you looked at the economics of actually doing your manufacturing overseas? Could this possibly push you to take that route?
It's funny you say that. I have a colleague who is doing exactly that. I'm not, though. We are the made in the USA aspect of our company is so ingrained in our brand that I might as well just close up and start a new company. But the funny part to the whole thing is the tariffs are damaging and they're hurting American companies. But yet they're not damaging enough where I'm still more expensive than anyone who would bring in finished goods, finished ties and bow ties from China. So my competitors who do everything overseas are still paying far less than my costs. And of course, that's even worsened by the fact that I'm paying tariffs too. Now, in theory, I'm not paying tariffs on the labor side of my expense, my cost of goods. But as tariffs settle in, and inflation starts to go up, that means I'm now going to have to start paying my workers more so that they can afford their goods when they go home and they have to go buy groceries and other things. So eventually we get nailed. But the answer is I'm not moving anything overseas. It sort of would defeat the purpose of this company. But the mere fact that I even have to consider that just shows you how ludicrous the idea is of putting tariffs on companies that make things domestically.
So one of the reasons I've really been looking forward to speaking with you is, a lot of people are in similar positions to you and have had no idea what to do about this. You've really made an effort to do something about it, going to Washington and lobbying for legislation that you think would help. Tell us first, how did you start thinking about that? And then what did you try to do?
Someone from the National Retail Federation in Washington, D.C. had reached out to me. They're a lobbying organization, an apolitical one. And they had reached out to me. They had been introducing small business owners from around the country to lawmakers and their staff to help tell the story of what's happening to all of us. And so I've actually been back 3 times now. We've met with senators, representatives, their staff. We've met even with the Trump administration, Department of Commerce, Department of Treasury. And I, at one point, drafted a Senate bill that I was able to get Senator Peter Welch to support.
Wait, you actually wrote up the bill yourself?
I did.
Do you have experience doing that?
No, but I have experience with ChatGPT.
Excellent.
Yeah, they did a great job because I sent the one page. First of all, I made it a 1-page Senate bill deliberately because I don't want this to be complicated. And the bill basically said domestic manufacturers are exempt from paying tariffs on raw materials and other inputs that they need in order to create their products. And Senator Welch from Vermont, he got very much behind it. But it is my understanding is it's never even been introduced. I think he might be looking for bipartisan support by someone in the Republican Party. But the Republicans are absolutely terrified to come anywhere near the tariff discussion. What's really happening is, obviously, if they speak out against President Trump, they face the real threat of being primaried, and they'll probably lose that primary. But equally, if they were on the other side and they in essence codified all of these tariffs and said, yeah, we support it and we're going to pass a law, I think a lot of them run the risk of losing in the general election because I think tariffs are so widely unpopular with the general populace. So what they're doing is they're just saying, okay, we're just not going to touch this. We're just going to keep saying, yeah, it's President Trump using his emergency powers to do this, and there's nothing we can really do about it. So they're just like keeping their hands off it altogether. So I've been going to DC, and I walk out of there. I walk out of the Capitol building with a lot of confidence, and I feel like I've made headway. But then I come back, and weeks, months go by, and I don't hear anything from anybody.
I would think this would have a lot of support among major corporations. I mean, if that bill that you described, if I understand it correctly, that would be tremendously beneficial to the car companies, for example. Big corporations that are bringing in raw materials to manufacture hard goods like that. Do you know the people you've talked to in Washington? Have they made that outreach to find that kind of corporate support?
No, I think the automotive industry in particular, though, it's a little trickier because a lot of the inputs they use from Mexico and Canada are actually stuff that we make here, as opposed to, let's say, the silk fabric that is not made here. So I think steel is a good example, right? So steel is made domestically in the U.S., and I think that's why Trump is having so many, whatever, he's having this conniption about tariffing the steel that comes in, at least from Canada. And so I don't know that part would really settle well. In part of my Senate bill, I recognize, or I forget if I recognize or I require that, in essence, the companies prove that the foreign outputs, or I should say inputs, are not made here in the U.S. So that would distinguish us from the automotive companies, right? So where the raw materials, the foreign goods, whatever, are not available in the U.S., that's when you're exempt. So I think the car companies wouldn't necessarily qualify for this exemption.
I see.
And I did that on purpose because honestly, that's where all the hiccups come. I'm trying to make this like sort of as hiccup-free as possible. And I could tell you that the cut and sew industry as a whole, in other words, the textile industry, we're importing fabric from everywhere. The U.S. at this point basically, I believe, only makes cotton. And even cotton is not like as readily available as it used to be. It certainly doesn't apply to my world. And of course, it makes the price go up also. Like when you use domestic, if you're a domestic manufacturer, you're already behind the 8 ball in pricing, right? You can't keep up with China. So if you're a cut and sew and you're ordering fabric from the US, you don't get any advantage pricing wise. You order from China and at least you can keep your costs down a little bit, be a little competitive. You order from the US and you're kind of like your prices are super high. So that doesn't apply to me. I'm just sort of speaking on their behalf. And I mean, it just goes to show you there's so much to consider when you talk about tariffs. And I get into these wars on LinkedIn with these non-retail experts who like to show up every so often and say, "Why don't you just make things in the U.S.?" And it's a complicated answer. It depends on so many different things: your industry, your cost. I don't know. There's just so many factors that play in, and it's not meant to have a real debate through comment section of a LinkedIn post. I just wish that I wish that people would stop listening to politicians as to whether or not tariffs are good and listen to economists and listen to retailers and importers, the people who are living it, or the economists who study it. Let those people tell you whether or not tariffs are good for this country. A politician has no idea.
My sense is that you are winning the battle for public opinion. Is that your sense?
Yeah.
I don't think tariffs are popular.
No, they're not. But until you really feel the pain at the store, it's not going to be a number one issue. And by the way, we all will feel it. I've been reading that basically it's going to still take another six months at this point. I read 6 to 9 months over the summer. So let's call it another 3 to 6 months. We're really going to start seeing prices rise. But what's so amazing about our political world is it felt like when President Biden was in office, one half of the country said, no, things are fine with pricing. And the other half said, everything's too expensive. And now it's like the reverse. And you feel like the Democratic base talks about how high prices are, and the Republicans say, no, I don't see any difference. Or they're blaming Biden. I don't know. But like, it's amazing how people just sort of see things differently, even though the facts haven't changed.
We do live in interesting times. I want to go back to the issue you raised about subsidizing farmers. In your bill, you talk about providing protection for small domestic manufacturers. There is precedent for that kind of carve out or that kind of subsidy. Trump did it for farmers in his first term, and he has kind of flirted with the idea this time around, talking about protecting soybean farmers, and to do it using money collected in tariffs to subsidize those soybean farmers, which means money that you kick in could end up going to protect the farmers. I'm curious how you would feel about that.
Well, as you can imagine, I'm fucking pissed at that idea. No disrespect to farmers, but why are they getting subsidies? Why am I not getting subsidies? Why are they using my money to subsidize them? It is Trump who caused the problem. He reminds me of the guy who throws somebody into the water and then throws that person a life preserver and then asks to be thanked for saving that person's life. He caused this problem with the farmers. These subsidies are not because farmers are having problems, let's say, due to weather. Then I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that. But the problem he caused for them, the soybeans in particular, is a Trump-caused issue. My understanding is China in particular used to order somewhere in the tens of billions of dollars a year in soybeans from us. And this year they've ordered zero, like literally $0.
And it's our biggest agricultural export, as I understand.
Yes, that's what I've heard too. So if that's all true, the idea of now subsidizing them with my tax dollars or my tariff dollars is absolutely insane. It's picking winners and picking losers. And I suppose that if retailers somehow were monolithic and voted as a block for Republicans, we would get subsidies, but we don't. We're splintered like most industries, and many of us we're pretty much split, let's say. Farmers, on the other hand, seem to, from what I hear, vote Republican, and that's why they're getting the subsidies.
Again, well, wait a second. I think that's largely true of business owners as well, don't you? I mean, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I think business owners did favor Trump.
I've not heard that, to be honest. I will tell you anecdotally, in my experience, It feels 50-50. So I don't know that
I
I
think it's probably much closer than among farmers, but
well, right. We could probably agree on that, right? So, right, farmers, for whatever reason. I mean, I still don't even understand the why part. Why would a farmer vote Republican? But that's more of a political talking point, which I have some opinions on, but that's not probably relevant to this conversation. But they do. The fact is they do. And as a result, our tariff dollars are subsidizing the farmers. And again, that problem was caused by the Trump administration and these new tariffs.
going back to the lobbying effort, can you tell me what did it feel like walking into those offices in the Capitol? Did you feel like you were being taken seriously?
There's a part of me that says the mere fact that they're taking the meeting means something. But some of the people that you meet with are clearly so mentally checked out that you start to realize that this might be more of like an exercise of checking a box. Yeah, I met with a small business owner. There were some staff members of Republican lawmakers who literally said to us, we're just going to trust the Trump administration on how he's handling tariffs. That was the response, and I was sort of, like, well, then why'd you even take this meeting?
Yeah.
And so, like, and yet on the other hand, there were some who were very responsive. They got it, but it very much also felt off the record. I had a House member from the Republican Party. I said to him, I go, would you just do me one favor and stop saying the lie that foreign countries pay tariffs? If you can at least stop lying about that, we can have better conversations around whether tariffs are healthy. And he said, yeah, we've been talking about how much that's forgot the words he used, but he basically acknowledged it was a lie. And so we've been talking about how to stop spreading that lie. And he realizes the damage it's doing. And that was sort of the end of the conversation. Oh, okay, that's great. So are you going to do anything about it? Didn't say anything, and Trump continues to lie. Yeah, every time he speaks about it, he lies and says foreign countries pay the tariffs. It's a lie.
People assume that lobbying is a game played best by people who have a lot of money, like big corporations, and
Right.
that it's a much tougher environment for smaller businesses, even if they're somewhat united and coming together. Which is kind of interesting because politicians love to talk about how great small businesses are and how important they are, the backbone of the economy, but they're not writing checks the way big businesses do. I'm curious if your experience has affected your thinking about that issue and whether it's even worth small businesses going to lobby in Washington.
I would say it's only solidified that opinion because when we walk in, we're a little bit of like just a show for them. I walk in with, let's say, 5 to 7 other business owners. We tell our little story. The person sitting in front of us shows a little sympathy, and then we're escorted out. I imagine that if I were the CEO of a major retailer, that conversation is a little bit different. I'm not going to claim that they write checks. Who knows? Campaign checks. I don't really know how that goes, but that's all we're doing. And I don't know exactly what the NRF does. They're a lobbyist group. I don't know if or whom they write checks to, and I don't think they're looking to do anything nefarious. They're only trying to communicate to lawmakers what's going on with small businesses. And by the way, retailers, 98% are small businesses. Would you believe that? 98% of retailers are small businesses.
That would be the percentage of businesses that are considered retailers, but not the percentage of dollars taken in by retailers, correct?
That is probably correct, right? So if you took all the small businesses in the country, 98% of us are small. Well, the revenue, no, probably not. But it just shows you what a huge majority we make up, and our voice is largely unheard. And I think the NRF is doing a great job of trying to have our voices heard. But that's all it really is. I mean, we're not Walmart, we're not Amazon, we're not Target. So I feel like it only goes so far. So at the end of all of this, after 3 meetings, despite the NRF doing such an amazing job, I don't think we've made any progress. And it's all because Republican legislators are afraid of Donald Trump. There's really no other reason.
It's the time of year where most businesses are starting to plan for next year, thinking about budgets, thinking about staffing. But from what you've just described here, there's so much uncertainty in your world. I mean, you don't know what your costs are going to be 2 weeks from now. Are you able to do any planning for next year?
We've done none. I mean, honestly, I'm trying to get through Christmas. We tried to plan properly for fabric. So right now we are just trying to get through Q4. I mean, the truth is, we got to get past November 1st. I mean, that is like that's an enormous hurdle for us right now. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if it's a 60 or 90 day. As far as planning for 2026 or anywhere past it, it's impossible. I'm not hiring anyone new. I don't know what I'm going to do about bonuses this year or raises. I don't know how I'm going to order for fabric for next year. Like everything I do, every decision I make is, are tariffs going to affect it? Sometimes it's directly and sometimes it's indirectly. And I know business owners everywhere. That's the same conversation we've been having really since the start of the year. Is the uncertainty is as damaging as the tariffs? And that part, I don't think we've stressed enough. That's why hiring has gone down. I mean, the economy, from my understanding, the GDP has not really moved too much negative in the negative direction after all the adjustments. It's hard to even know anymore with all these numbers. That who knows what's really true? But the hiring, you're seeing freezes, and I think a lot of that has to do with a combination of the tariffs and inflation, which are related to the tariffs.
Do you have a plan for what you will do on November 1st if, in fact, that 100% in addition tariff were to go into effect?
We would wait the whole thing out for as long as we could. If it never changed back, so it went to 100% permanently, there's a great chance we'd close up.
Well, I think it just bears emphasis what you were saying before, the idea of picking winners and picking losers. In this case, if you were to be a loser, you would be a domestic manufacturer who has spent a great deal of energy building Made in America into your brand.
All for nothing.
Did I miss anything, Greg? Anything else any other points you would like to make?
I will say one other thing. We were talking about bow ties of Vermont the whole time, but with respect to like Carrie Amber, so we make women's intimates and we sell them to off-price retailers at really low prices. And the only way we're able to do that is to manufacture them overseas. It's the only way to keep the costs down. People who shop at off-price retailers, a lot of them are shopping there not because they're bargain hunters who have money. They're people they're working class people. They don't make a lot of money. They can't afford $30 bras. They have to buy inexpensive bras, inexpensive underwear. And bra and underwear, by the way, is a necessity. It's not a luxury. And so making products overseas for inexpensive prices is actually good for the American economy, believe it or not. It's important that we manufacture certain things here in the U.S., products that are related to national security. But we don't really need to learn how to manufacture textiles here. We don't. And by the way, Secretary Bessent said it himself at a press conference that we're not looking to reshore textile manufacturing jobs. So if we can all agree that we're not looking to reshore things like textiles, then why tariff these products that are coming in the U.S.? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so I guess the point is, having inexpensive consumer goods is an important part of our economy, whether or not you want to admit it. I'm sorry that the products aren't made here in the U.S. That doesn't mean that we don't hire people. Carrie Amber has 40 employees. Those people would not have a job if we couldn't make these products overseas.
40 employees here in the U.S.
Here in the U.S., right? And so we are employing Americans, good quality jobs, good salaries, all because we're manufacturing overseas. So the idea that we're losing jobs because things are being made overseas is a really narrow interpretation of what's going on. And I think that part seems to get lost. We need inexpensive items in this country. When 60% of the country, 60% of the households in this country make less than $100,000 a year, that means we need inexpensive products. And inexpensive products don't come out of the U.S. They come out of foreign countries. in poorer countries, typically in Asia. And that's part of our economy. And that's not a bad thing. Our GDP has doubled since 2008. We went from a $14 trillion GDP economy to 28 trillion. We've done that in part because we are importing inexpensive goods from overseas. That doesn't sound like we're getting screwed to me. It sounds like we're doing quite well.
Greg Sugar is the owner of Bow Ties, BEAU Ties, and an investor in Carrie Amber Intimates. Greg, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Have a great weekend, everybody.